I think blues is one of the greatest genres of music because it's so honest and it's so much about the human experience. And it's just got so many great elements to it that make it really attractive.
It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis.
Slash surprised a lot of people earlier this year when he announced he was going to release his first ever blues album, Orgy of the Damned. That album was released on May 17th. It features a who's who of artists in the music world, including contemporary acts like Gary Clark Jr. and Beth Hart. You've got Paul Rogers, Billy Gibbons, Chris Stapleton. The list goes on and on. This album quickly went to #1 on the Billboard Blues chart. We had a chance to catch up with Slash and talk to him about this album, coming up with the blues, why now was the right time to create a blues album, along with his upcoming blues festival, the S.E.R.P.E.N.T Festival. We got his opinion on some of today's contemporary blues rock acts like Samantha Fish, Eric Gales, Kingfish. We also got to find out from Slash what makes a great guitar player and a whole lot more. We hope you enjoy our interview with Slash. I know when you were younger, your grandma kind of turned you on to the blues. What was the first album, do you remember, that really grabbed you when you were young? That was blues.
Well, it's hard to say what the names of the records from when I was young because I was I was so young. The one thing I do remember was the B.B. King record Live at the Regal. And I just remember that because it was such a foreign thing, like Live at the Regal. What does that mean? There was an Albert King record. I remember it well because it had playing cards on it. Oh, it was the Born Under a Bad Sign record. Anyway, so I remember those two from when my grandmother, back then. But then when I started playing guitar, then I started getting into a whole plethora of different blues records when I was like 15 years old, 16 years old.
Now you've got the S.E.R.P.E.N.T Festival coming up, and this is really cool that you're providing a platform for this music. And a lot of these artists that don't normally get to be on a really big platform like this. Why was that important for you?
Well, I didn't think of it like that. I just thought about, I was going to do this thing, and I didn't even want to be the headliner at first. I wanted somebody else to be the headliner. But anyway, so yeah, I definitely didn't see it as that kind of a format. I was just picking bands that I thought, artists that I thought were really cool that are sort of, newish, that I've been turned on to in recent years. Samantha Fish isn't new, but she hasn't been around that long. Chris Ingram has been around for a little bit, but I only got turned on to him in the last 5 years or so. But he started to make a name, on the bigger stage, I think. Warren Haynes has been around, obviously, forever. Eric Gales, I've known for a long time. ZZ Ward is pretty new, but she's great, So Larkin Poe has been around for a little bit. So I didn't think of this as being like a big platform. I just thought these are just a bunch of really cool bands that I would like to have on this show.
Yeah, well, it's definitely unique, and it is a great platform for these artists. You mentioned Kingfish, and he's an artist who in the last couple of years, especially in the blues world, has really garnered a lot of attention. How did he get on your radar initially, and what were your impressions when you first heard Kingfish?
Well, he's just a great, he's got he's just a real great, flavorful feel blues guitar player. He's just got a great sort of personal vocabulary that really is more about really expressing himself in the moment, whatever those notes may be. It's hard. There's a lot of very technical musicians, even in the blues, right, where there's a lot of techniques and a lot of certain kinds of scales or whatever people are doing, that you can tell that there's a very sort of learned thing going on, but they're really good at it. But then there's some players that really just express themselves very naturally and just have a great vocabulary on its own without having to sort of uh, recall all these different sort of um, you know, techniques and modes and this and that. At least, at least to me, it doesn't sound like that. Anyway, and he was just one of these guys. And the funny thing is I think I first was turned on to him through Instagram, if I remember correctly. I just happened to see a video of him. I was like, who's this guy? And that was how it started.
Awesome. Another guitar player that you mentioned is Eric Gales. I get a chance to interview a lot of guitar players, a lot of great guitar players. And when I ask
Uh-huh.
them about who are some of the guitar players that really blow them away, Eric Gales' name comes up all the time.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah. I saw him play a long time ago. I was doing this Jimi Hendrix festival in Los Angeles, and I was playing with Billy Cox and Mitch Mitchell. And Eric Gale's band played earlier that evening, and I'd never heard of him before, and I was just like, wow, this guy is fucking on fire. Yeah. So I've been sort of aware of him ever since then.
What impresses you about his playing?
Well, he's that guy that, we were talking about Chris, right? Where he just has this sort of natural, fluid way of playing that's really got a lot of feel. And so Eric is sort of like he's got that, and he's also got an amazing technical prowess. But he doesn't make it sound like he's trying to sound, a lot of these guys that are real technical in their sort of ability sound like that, and it doesn't really do anything for me. But Eric manages to mix it into his natural fucking, amazing feel for the guitar. And it's sort of unique in blues, that kind of approach.
Yeah, he's got a really unique sound.
Yeah.
Another guitar player that you mentioned that's going to be joining you on the first leg of the tour is Samantha Fish. How did she get on your radar, and what stands out when you listen to her?
Um, I think someone turned me on to her. Said, have you ever heard of Samantha Fish? And played me something of hers. And I thought it was great. And so I just sort of started paying attention to her. And the last couple of years, she's really sort of popped up all over the place. But she's great because she's got a great spirit, and she's got a great voice, and she's got a great attitude, and she's no bullshit. She, in some ways, I don't know, it's not really, she doesn't sound like Bonnie Raitt, but in some ways she reminds me of Bonnie Raitt from a long time ago. But she's just got a great guitar feel, and her whole presentation is really cool and unique.
So, as far as the Serpent Festival goes, can you give people a little bit of a taste of what they can expect? Are we going to see all these acts kind of playing their own set, and then everyone kind of jams together? You've got your set. How does that going to go?
It's everybody's got their own set, and we've got our own set, and we're sort of just getting that whole. We have a lot of songs, so we're trying to figure out how we're supposed to do it all within a certain amount of time, and so it's going to be a fun set for us. And then I figure we'll figure out some sort of kind of jam for after the show for anybody who wants to do it that's going to hang out that late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're winging it. Let's put it that way. But
Hey, that's the blues, right?
we'll figure it out. We'll end up getting something together every night. And plus I plan on bringing guests in, from the area, people who are I'm familiar with that happen to be in a particular city, in that we're playing in. So we'll see how that all comes together as well.
Awesome. What are your current thoughts on the blues scene right now?
It's pretty exciting to me. It just seems like there's a lot of there's a lot of vibrant enthusiasm going on in the blues scene, a lot of activity happening, and it actually feels pretty fresh. Um, just God, fuck, there's so many artists out there doing it right now. So that to me, it just seems really healthy. a lot of really great players. So it's exciting.
How do you think we get more young people listening to blues?
You know, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, when you say that, do you mean how do we get more people, young people
Yeah,
into it?
how do we bring more young people into the genre so they actually start listening to this music? Because a lot of them are just they just never hear it.
Right. I mean, I actually think there's a pretty healthy young audience tuned in right now. At least it seems so to me. And I think it has to have a lot to do with social media and some of the other streaming platforms that are available to people that um, kids are starting to get more exposed to it than ever before. Because it used to be you had to know somebody, that would actually turn you on to it, or it had to be a guitar player that you're into that turns you on to it. Word of mouth was basically it. So it's always been a little bit of a small cult, and there's not a lot of newcomers coming in like you do in pop music per se, and there's not tons of it on the radio. But it seems now there's a broader um, accessibility to blues. And I think there is a lot more young people being turned on to it at the moment.
Let me phrase it this way too. Why should young people listen to the blues?
Well, I think people should only listen to the blues if the blues turns them on. I don't think anybody needs to do anything unless it means something to them. But definitely, everybody should be exposed to everything and see what they like. You have to have those you have to have um, the opportunity to be able to have options. In other words, you have to be introduced to things to be able to pick and choose. I mean, I think blues is one of the greatest genres of music because it's so honest and it's so much about the human experience, and it's just got so many great elements to it that make it really attractive. So I think people should be exposed to it because chances are they'll really like it. you know but it's each to their own.
Robert Randolph is also on the tour,
Mhm.
obviously known as a pedal steel master. I understand you've started playing pedal steel in the last couple of years. What inspired that?
Yeah, well, it's a long story. I I just always loved the sound of pedal steel, and I'm not a huge country guy, but I'm a big fan of sort of like the 60s and 70s, 60s and early 70s sort of outlaw country guys. And pedal steel was such a paramount part of that sound. So I always liked it, but didn't know much about it. And Jeff Baxter came over to my studio at one point. I think it was like in 2008, and he brought a pedal steel over and he played it for me, and I saw how it worked. And he goes, "Yeah, so I'll leave it with you overnight and you can fiddle around with it. I got to pick it up tomorrow." And I was like, that was way too much information to try and have really learned anything overnight, but whatever. Anyway, so he came and picked up the next day, and it was in the back of my mind. And when, all fast forward to 2022, and I was in the studio in Nashville, and there was just and I was at the old RCA Studio B, which is a great historic old studio. And we were recording a record over there, and just the whole place exuded this really great um, legacy of artists, and the vibe that was there. I was really, really inspiring. Anyway, and so while I was there, in between takes or whatever, I found this book that I started reading, which was about all the different Nashville artists, and one of them was Lloyd Green, who, for some reason, that just really sort of got me excited reading about this particular guy. And when I came back from that session back to LA, I ended up buying a used pedal steel and sort of locked myself up in my own sort of woodshedding it in my own room by myself to get to sort of like figure out how to learn the basics. And I got all the books, and old books from the 50s and 60s, really, and just started to learn how to play it. Anyway, so I've been at it ever since. I'm completely obsessed with it.
So do you think we'll
And
see that on the Serpent
yeah, I
Festival?
know I've got a song dedicated to it in the set as it stands right now. And Robert Randolph actually turned me on to Jackson Pedal Steel, who's the model that I'm using, the brand that I'm using right now. So I appreciate him turning me on to it.
Awesome. Do you envision the Serpent Festival continuing after this year, like becoming an annual thing?
It's such a great outlet for me. I'm really excited to finally be able to have a platform where I can just play this all night. Because I do a lot of sitting in with bar bands and whatnot. But I mean, in Guns N' Roses and the Conspirators or Velvet Revolver or whatever, it's not really a great vehicle for sort of stripped down kind of blues. I mean, it's obviously all very blues based, but this is more of a sort of raw, just straightforward, sort of old school blues thing, which is I really enjoy doing. So now you will see how this tour goes, and I would like to take it to Europe, or just take it internationally. I think it would be really well received in different countries, because they don't have like a touring blues festival like this anywhere else. And then, yeah, I'd love to be able to do it every year, sort of like what Clapton was doing with Crossroads, where it was sort of an annual thing. I would love to do that.
So you've done a blues album now. Is there any other genre that you've never dabbled into that you would want to create an album for?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I do a lot of little things here and there. I've been doing a lot of soundtrack stuff, which I enjoy doing, and there's a lot of different styles in that. But to really commit to a whole record of a specific kind of a style is a little bit of a tall order, because that's basically a real focus on a particular brand or genre of music. With blues, it's really a big part of me, and I just needed to finally focus on say, okay, I'm going to make this record. I had a blues band that this was inspired by way back in 1998, and I wanted to make a record then. And at the time, there was just too much going on for me to be able to prioritize making the record at that point. So I've been busy with all kinds of stuff all these years since then. But I finally found a moment where I decided, okay, I'm going to make this record, and finally got a chance to do it. But this is something I could commit to very easily. Whereas if I was going to say, I'm going to do an all Spanish guitar record, I would have a hard time doing an entire album of that. But this is something that feels very natural for me.
Right. And you've got a lot of great guitar players joining you on the Serpent Festival. In your opinion, what makes a great guitar player?
I think I finally came to came to the realization that what really makes a great guitar player is a guitar player who expresses their true personality in their music. So what you're hearing is one individual, you know what I mean? Um, all people are different and all players are different. And the people that I really enjoy the most, it's not a skill set or a focused skill thing about how fast or how schooled or how insanely gifted anybody necessarily is. It's all about how much of that unique person comes out of their instrument, and it makes them stand apart. So you actually really appreciate the way they sound. You know what I mean? I think that's to me is what makes a great guitar player. All the guitar players that I love for as long as I can remember, they were all all very unique players unto themselves, and there's all different levels of sort of uh, skill and tone and whatever involved. And it's just really about that individual's own personality on the instrument, and that's what turns me on.
If you had to start your career all over from the beginning, how would you do it now?
Like if I had to start it all over from the beginning
Yeah, no,
today,
like no one knows who you are.
this particular moment in time, like at this.
Yeah, yeah.
That's in some ways, like when you're just continuing to keep working, there's an aspect of that that's actually happening right now anyway. But then, I am basing that off years of experience. So there's that part of it that, obviously is not new in the moment. If I had to really start all over, I would have to just look at what's going on around me and try and make the best of whatever opportunities and platforms and it's a completely different playing field than it was when I first started. Some of it's the same. I mean, you can go out and you can book gigs and try and build an audience, that still exists, but a lot of it is exposure that happens online. There's a lot of different ways of going about it now. So I would just have to read the playing field and try and figure it out. That's all you ever really are doing is just looking at what's available and figuring out your own path, you know?
Yeah, totally. Any final thoughts? Anything else that you want to get out there?
No, you were asking me all the questions. I didn't actually have anything in particular I wanted to say, but I'm really excited about what's going on right now, and I'm really enjoying it and looking forward to this tour. And it's really been, I had no expectations when I was making the record. I just did it for the fun of it. But having done the record and being able to put together a 6 week long tour to go out with all these great bands is something I've not done before, in this genre anyway. And so I'm really don't know what I'm doing, but it's it's gonna be fun.
Well, what you're doing for the genre is really important. It's going to help these artists out. It's going to help this music out. So thank you for doing that.
Oh no, well no, I'm flattered that you would say that. I would love to be able to contribute. So if you think that I'm helping in that way, that's awesome.